we are positing a special ego or egotism behind that, that I have done this, I have done that, I am doing this, I am doing that. When that becomes clear that it is all like a gunas functioning, I am not getting touched by anything at all. I am only the sakshi of whatever. Actually that is also not true, but at least that much, that I am the sakshi of whatever is happening. Then we don't see any other karta beyond the gunas. So in this 14th chapter, in this verse, he is saying that yada drashta gunebhyah anyam kartaram nanupashyati. See, they have used anupashyati. That means it is not a direct seeing. Whatever we are seeing, following that we are positing an egoistic I-ness there, that I have done this, I have done that, a karta. This kartritva bodha will go when we understand that it is only a phenomenological thing. The instruments of nature, they are functioning. I am not doing anything. If I is there, the consciousness, it remains untouched by everything. Then gunebhyascha param vetti. He sees something transcending the gunas. Madbhavam sodhi gacchati. Transcending the gunas what? That real I, the real identity, the consciousness which never changes, never gets fragmented. It is not identified with any body at all. It is one and beyond one. That he knows. Param vetti. He knows that consciousness. Then he attains my bhava. So Naishkarmya is this bhava that I am not doing anything at all. I have not doing means I have not inactive also. Suppose initially we said that people remain inactive by thinking that it is Naishkarmya. But because they have doership, try to understand this point. Because they have doership, when their body mind is not functioning, they are calling that I am not doing. Actually that has no meaning. Because of the doership they are saying I am now acting and I am now not acting. When I am not acting also, the sense of not acting is coming because of your doership. वो acceptable नहीं है. हम जब करते हैं तो हम सोचते हैं कि हम कर रहे हैं, वो doership है. जब हम कुछ नहीं करते हैं तो हम सोचते हैं हम नहीं करते, वो doership नहीं है क्या? वो भी doership, वो भी कर्तृत्व है. हम सोचते हैं कि हम नहीं कर रहे हैं. तो काम नहीं करके कभी नैष्कर्म्य नहीं आने वाले हैं. जब हम देखेंगे कि हमारे ऊपर सब पूरा दुनिया नाच रही है, पूरी दुनिया नाच रही है, सब कुछ काम हो रहा है, galaxies are getting born, galaxies are destroying, everything is taking place here, but I am not touched by anything at all. Then only it becomes Naishkarmya Siddhi. I am not affected by anything, any change happening in the universe. कुछ भी change हो, वो हमें स्पर्श नहीं करता है. जैसे you think that the sun is reflected on a lake, there are so many waves. So each wave is producing a sun. When you see, each wave you will see a reflection of the sun. And the sun will dance according to the movement of the wave. Is it not so? The reflected sun will move according to the wave. We think that the sun is moving, but is the sun moving? The real sun is not moving. It appears to be moving. So when the wave goes, we find that the sun has gone. Suppose there is a wave. When it subsides, we will feel that that sun has gone. Actually nothing has happened to the sun. It was the wave which was reflecting, that has gone. Like that, we often ask what happens to my Atma, etc. Nothing happens to the Atma when the body falls. In your body, the Atma is just like the reflection of the sun. What we think as our I, generally we are utilizing, that I is the reflection of the real I in our buddhi or in our bodhi. It's the fundamental of the where from the buddhi is rising, there. That's the origin of the buddhi, where all revelations take place. Because when we say buddhi, we think that the buddhi is the analytical part of the mind. That is what we call buddhi. But the real revelation takes place not by analysis, it takes place where from the buddhi also is rising. Suppose that you are, how do you know you are? Is it by buddhi that we have to analyze and prove that I am? Even if I prove you are not, you will say that I know I am. How do you know? That is the bodhi. Where it shines, that is your I, that is the consciousness. Just below that is the consciousness. So there it shines, that is called the bodhi. So, the consciousness we always feel is that I-ness which is shining in the buddhi. So when the body dies, that reflection of the chit goes. But nothing happens to the chit. The chit remains as it was. I have another example. These are very lofty concepts, but if you can understand, it's good. Suppose the sunlight is coming from the top. Now you can hold a mirror here, a small mirror, and reflect the beam. You can see the world with the reflected beam in that mirror. You can move the mirror and see the world wherever you want. Now the reflected beam will have some characteristics of the mirror. Suppose the mirror is yellow colored, then the reflected beam will be yellow. If the mirror is teda, then it will show a distorted figure. Depending on that mirror, you will see the world. Suppose we have 5 indriyas, we see the world in one manner. Suppose we had 10 indriyas, then the world will be different from us. So that is only the characteristic, the charitra of the mirror, according to which we are seeing the world. Now, we can place millions of mirrors in that sunlight. All will reflect the sunbeam in its own manner, and they will see the world with that. Agreed? So, this reflected beam is like what we are generally thinking I am. Our small I associated with the body-mind personality is like this reflected beam, which is showing us the world. We are interacting with the world with that beam. So when the mirror breaks, the reflected beam is gone. But has anything happened to the sunlight which is coming down? So if before the mirror breaks, you can identify that I am not the reflected beam but the sun. If I think that the source of the reflected beam is the mirror, is it right? That is what we are always seeing. You had said yes, but that is what we are always thinking. That this I, with which the consciousness I am functioning, that source is me. Actually the source is the chit, which is reflected in our buddhi and giving us the idea of the small I associated with the body-mind complex. So we have to know that I am not the reflected beam but the original beam. How will you know? You start moving the mirror towards the original beam. Move the mirror towards the original beam. When it becomes exactly perpendicular to the original beam, is there any reflected beam? It has got merged with the original beam. The two has got merged. Exactly this thing we do in practicing samadhi or to experience the self. What do? We sit, we forget about the world, we try to look within where from the I is coming. Is it not so? Self means the I. So we have to locate where from the I is coming. Where from the I is coming. Oh, it is not the body because I am the seer of the body, I am the knower of the body. Body is an object before me. The mind also, I am knowing the thoughts. It is revealed by the I. So the mind is an object before the I. ठीक है ना जब Similarly, the emotions, the intelligence, everything I am seeing as object before me. So that is not the I. I is the subject which is revealing the body, the external universe, the internal universe of mind, emotion, intelligence, any thoughts, forms. Everything is revealed by that I. Then how to look, how to find out what is that I? You have to take away from all that is being seen. So you have to forget the whole world. Now mind you, when I say whole world, it includes your body, mind, personality. I am meditating, I have to discover the self. Hoga nahi. As long as that small I is living in your vritti, it will not happen. Because still You are having that object sense. You are looking at you as a object of the universe. So looking within towards the eye means you are turning that mirror towards the main beam. So the turning has to be complete when nothing in the world will be any more visible, including your own body-mind complex. So this is a merger where, although we are trying to look at the subject I which is seeing the world, finally it becomes beyond subject and object. The both object and subject comes from this. Unless we go beyond this subject and object duality, we will not be able to identify, we will not be able to have this merger. That may not be clear to you, no? That is, you have to forget the whole world which includes your body, mind, personality also. Then only the self will be revealed, the consciousness will be revealed. Suppose now I am seeing this microphone, microphone. Unless the consciousness reveals this microphone, we will not know that it is there. But when the consciousness is revealing the microphone, our focus is on what is revealed and not on the revealer. Revealer, consciousness. We never never try to know what is the consciousness. Our focus is on what is revealed, the microphone. Similarly, when you are looking inside also, the focus is on what thought is there. The thought is revealed by the consciousness, but your focus is on the thought. The moment the thought is revealed, your focus is on the thought, not on the consciousness which is revealing the thought. So always by our tendency to look at something different from me, that is, I always want to know, even self also we want to look at self as something different from me. I want to look at the self as objective something before me. So as long as we are trying that, the consciousness is getting engaged in that object. Is it not so? It is taking the form of the object. When it is revealing the microphone, the consciousness is taking the form of the microphone. When it is revealing a good thought, the consciousness is taking the form of the good thought. When it is revealing a bad thought, the consciousness is taking a form of the bad thought. When we have some Ishvara darshana, say I am a worshipper of Shiva and I have a darshan of Shiva, then my consciousness is taking the form of Shiva. So everywhere it is taking a form. The consciousness is getting engaged and creating a form, and our focus is always on the form. So only when we have left everything, forgotten everything, the consciousness has nothing else to reveal. When we have left everything, forgotten everything, then the consciousness is not getting involved or engaged in anything at all. It remains free. So it reveals itself only then. But it does not reveal as an object. It is a revelation which we call aparokshanubhuti or advaya. It is non-dual revelation, because the subject of the division also will not be there. So to have this Naishkarma, we have to go to that extent. Only when we know that I am like the sun which is getting reflected in so many waves, the waves are dancing, with that the images are dancing, but nothing happens to the sun at all. I am the original sun. The reflections are moving here and there, like that the so-called consciousness in the body, they are also active in the different bodies. But I am not touched by anything at all. Then he knows that I am not doer of anything at all. Nature is the doer. The gunas, the three gunas are playing their own game. I am only an observer of that. Actually, it is not an observer. I am, you can say, observer of that. So that is called Naishkarmya, that you understand that I am not a doer, I am not an enjoyer. It is all a play of the gunas. It's a play of the prakriti, play of nature. And that is real sannyasa also. The real sannyasa is internal. Samyak nyasa. That is, I said, when we leave everything, the whole world, including my own body-mind complex, everything is left, everything is forgotten. Then only The self reveals itself. This nyasa means tyaga of everything. That means tyaga of ego that we have. That is called sannyasa. The real sannyasa is an internal. It's not in the outside dress or anything. So it is called, that is why we generally in our shastras we call two kinds of sannyasas are there. Vividisha sannyasa and vidvat sannyasa. Vividisha means to know, that yearning to know. Vividisha. Yearning to know. So people take up this sannyasa with the yearning to know the truth. So they change their outer life, they do not do other karmas and all, and they take to a no worldly action life to pursue this goal of attaining the real sannyasa. Vidvat sannyasa is called when he has understood that I am a sannyasin, that is the real Naishkarmya has been understood. Then he becomes a misfit in the world, so he changes his dress or changes his ashrama. Either he may change dress or take to white or something. He no longer remains in any worldly activity. He remains as a spiritual person, doing good for the others, whatever to be done. Whoever comes to him, he does something. Otherwise, he is not having any desire motivated activity at all. Whatever comes to be done, he does. So when the sannyasa is taken after the knowledge, after knowledge, it is called vidvat sannyasa. So two kinds of external sannyasas are also there. So here he is saying the nacha sannyasanat eva siddhim samadhigacchati. And in 18th chapter he has discussed the sannyasa is kamyanam karmanam nyasam. That is leaving all the desireful activity. So the real leaving of the ego will not occur even if you leave the desireful activities. The ego will still work inside. If he comes back to the society again, his ego will be punishing him. So until he understands that nanyam gunebhyah kartaram yada drashtanu pashyati nanyam gunebhyah kartaram yada drashtanu pashyati gunebhyascha param vetti tad madbhavam sodhigacchati. He sees something beyond the gunas, that is the consciousness in which all the gunas are functioning. The whole universe is dancing on that with these gunas, but actually they are all in the consciousness alone. They don't have any other separate existence. They are all made of gunas, their energy is also made of gunas. Whatever divisions we see, it is the consciousness and consciousness alone. Then this Naishkarmya and Sannyasa both take place. In the 6th chapter, 1 and 2, open the 6th chapter. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyah yam sannyasamiti prahuhu yogam tam viddhi pandava nahyasanyasta sankalpo nahi asamnyasta sankalpo. It's a difficult word. Nahyasamnyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. So this is what he is confirming again from whatever we are studying in the 6th chapter, 1 and 2. He says that anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha. Karyam karma karoti yaha. Karyam means whatever to be done, that action he does. How does he do? Anashrita karma phalam. Anashrita means, ashraya means taking refuge in, or you can say holding on to, clinging to. Anashrita means not clinging to the karma phala. Now, karma phala, don't think that it is the objective phala Bhagavad Gita is speaking. Whenever Bhagavad Gita is speaking about karma phala, it is the internal phala. In 18th chapter, he has defined Anishtam Ishtam Mishram Cha Trividha Karmana Phalam. Three kinds, what I like, what I dislike, what I did not want, and a mixture of the two. They are all in our mind, what I like, what I don't like. Now, as long as the objective karma phala, the result of the action is concerned, can we do anything about it? It will automatically take place in the objective world. Is it not so? Suppose you walk to come to the CIRD. Will you not reach CIRD? After reaching, you will say, no, I did not want to come to, this is the karma phala of my walking or driving. I don't want to be in CIRD, I left it and went away. Suppose you put up a factory for making shoes. So you have to design the machinery and workers and everything so that the factory produces shoes. And when you do it properly, will not the factory produce shoes? Will you say that, no, I don't want the shoes after that? Objective phala, we cannot do anything. It will follow the causality. Even in subtle sense also, whatever we are doing, it is having an effect on the mind, that follows causality. Some causality we can understand, and some causality, they are subtle, we are not able to understand. Many things. We spoil our child and later on say, how the child has become like this. I have not been like this. But you have not been like this, but you have spoiled your child. Your behavior in his childhood has affected his character. We don't remember that. So there are subtle karmas also which are having the phalas, having the corresponding results. They may not be so gross objective, they might be subtle objective. But they will have their result. Any objective field, causality will work. In the entire creation, causality alone works. So there is no question of rejecting the karma phala. A girl became pregnant. 9 months she had been looking after the pregnancy. When the delivery is given, will she reject the child? We are studying to pass the exam. When the result comes, will we reject the result? There is no meaning in saying that the objective karma phala is rejected. This karma phala is the karma phala I am telling you for the last 3 to 4 days. It is the carrot at the end of the karma that I will become happy by that. That has to be rejected, nothing else. That I will have, that factory will produce the shoes, I will sell the shoes, that will go into the market and we will have money, and with the money I will have a 14-storied building and then I will be happy living there. That happy, you will not be happy. Even if you have a 28-storied building also, how many beds will you sleep? You can sleep only on one bed. You can stay only on one floor. You will not be happy. It will cause more of botheration. So, karma phala tyaga means that we are clinging to the end part of it, the carrot of happiness at the end of it. That has to be rejected. That nothing is going to be making me happy at all. Whatever to be done, I will do. And the moment you can leave that carrot of happiness, the happiness starts oozing out from you, welling forth from you. See the beauty of it. The moment you remove that carrot of happiness in front, you remove it really, you will find that you become blissful. That is what happens in meditation. How do people get the blissfulness in meditation? When they have forgotten everything of the world, then only they get the blissfulness. Is any desire remaining there? They have forgotten the world of desires. Because they have forgotten the desires, they are getting a bliss which they have never got anything from the world at all. They get flooded with the desire, with the happiness, the bliss we call. That happens only because of the elimination of the desire. Suppose you are wanting something very intensely. When that is fulfilled, will you not have more happiness? Is there any difference of opinion? You want something intensely. Then for that you forego all other things. When that desire is fulfilled, is not the happiness also strong, intense there? It is so. You know why? Because the intensity of the desire has kept away all other small desires, quarrel, everything, gone away. So when that is fulfilled for a longer period of time and In a wholesome manner, the mind is free of desires. In small, small fulfilling, it will not happen. But when is intensely you are working, you have forgotten all your comfort, everything. Suppose you are working for something, some project, you have forgotten your sleep, you have forgotten your food, everything, and the project becomes successful. You become so happy for quite some time. Till the project, another difficulty comes in, you are happy. So there also the intensity of the happiness is because of the intensity of the elimination and wholesomeness of the elimination of the desires that has taken place.